I think I've seen evidence of professionals, young, talented, that have gone the traditional route without admission, that are in really great positions. You know, they are the head of legal, they are the head of advisory, they are sitting on exco of different companies, right?
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. There's been a lot of things happening. One of those things is our mentorship day happening on 28 September 2024 at Bowman's. Guys, we're so excited. I hope you guys have registered because only those who have registered can attend the event. We had limited seats, but everybody who has registered, you are in for a treat. So welcome back to my channel. I'm Kensani and I bring you faith, education, wisdom, and lifestyle content. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. And in today's video, we are focusing on the legal aspect of our channel. Most of the time, that's what we've been doing. And my guest today is Oboikanyo Kekana. I'm going to call her Obi from now on. And I will just give a brief intro of Obi. Obi is an LLB graduate from Wits University. Her journey at Wits saw her occupy office and serve on the Law Students' Council and serve in SRC subcommittees. She was involved in social justice organizations and student activism causes. She was nominated by Golden Key to join the organization after her first year of studies. After graduation, she pursued a career path in the banking and digital finance industry, focusing on regulatory risk or compliance and AML space. She now occupies a role with one of the regulatory authorities in South Africa, which are responsible for overseeing activities by participants in the financial sector and designated non-financial business and professions at large. Obi is incredibly passionate about young talent and empowering young emerging leaders to pursue opportunities in line with their strengths and providing mentorship and exposure to various avenues available to them to realize their goals. She's a sister, a daughter, a devoted friend. She loves art in all its forms, lives for adventure, and is an intentional community builder. Welcome, Obi.
Thank you. Thank
What
you
a
so much.
bio, my darling.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
It's an
welcome.
honor. Finally here.
Excuse me. Oh, yeah, well, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yes. We've known each other,
Yes, we
but
have.
never really interacted for a while.
True.
Until last year,
Yeah.
I think. Or is it earlier this year?
I think it was early this year.
Earlier this year in
Yeah.
March at the singles event.
Yes.
Talama singles event.
Yes.
And then I was like, I want Obi to come to the channel. Because
Now
I
I'm
knew
here.
we both studied law, but we never got a chance to have our path come across in a interactive way.
True. And we ran in the same circle. So I'd always see you around and I know of you and I know you through other people, but we've just never gotten together. So it was
Right.
like a full circle moment.
Yeah,
It was
it's
really
crazy.
great.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. So great to have you, Obi. So what I know is that you studied law, but you don't do your articles, so you never got admitted.
Yes.
And I wanted to find out what influenced your decision not to pursue your articles.
Whew. Oh, okay. So I graduated, right? And obviously, during your studies, there's so much information that comes at you from law school about, the traditional routes. And I think the space that I was in, there was a specific route that was emphasized more than the others. I think I was really blessed and I was blessed to be involved in a lot of student councils and all of these other organizations, which actually gave exposure to all of the different routes that you can follow. So you can go to the Concord, you can do your articles if you want to, you can join an organization as a compliance officer or rather a compliance professional. You can join the AML space, you can join consulting companies. There's so many avenues that you can take. I think I sort of woke up to the realization that, articles may not necessarily be for me. I think at that point in time, it felt like the right thing to do because everyone was doing it and it was the most glorified path to take. And there was sort of this unspoken narrative that if you don't make it into a big firm, you didn't really secure the bag. But I don't know, I was just so convinced that there was so much more to the legal, or rather the career that I wanted to build. And I was lucky enough to discover a vacation program with one of the big banks. I joined, and there were about 100 of us, and they picked their top 10 or top 15 to join the bank in the following year upon graduation, and that's sort of where my journey began. So I didn't go into articles, I didn't go to a traditional law firm. I went straight into banking and landed in the AML and compliance space, and that's where my journey began.
I think what stood out for me from both your intro and now when you just gave us that brief, you mentioned something about AML space. Okay. What is that?
So the AML space is anti-money laundering, right? Anti-money laundering, risk, compliance, those all sort of work hand in hand. They branch out into each other. So when I first started at the first organization I worked at, it was a bank, right? I was mostly in the AML space. So I did anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing. I was mostly in that space. And as you grow and you solidify your knowledge in AML and CFT, you get exposure to compliance, right?
Okay.
In its true form. You get exposure to what risk means in the business. You get exposure to the different products that the business has and what sort of risk profile each one presents in the market at large. And so I think that's how I started building my rapport in the compliance space. I was in my first role for about 3.5 years before I moved on to my next role. And I think I got so much exposure to what was going on in that specific organization, but also the banking community. And I think that's where I sort of thought, you know what, banking in this, so from this perspective is something that really holds my interest, and that's how I navigated from there. Okay. I think it's also really important to know that you don't have to stay stuck on one route, pivot. I think I'll go into that as we go. But yes, that's basically what AML is. It's anti-money laundering. Although I don't do much anti-money laundering now, I'm more compliance focused. But that's where everything starts. That's the bedrock, especially in the financial sector.
Okay. So you're talking to lay persons and students and people who probably want to pivot, who were in other industries, so they might not understand AML, CFT. So what's a CFT?
So CFT is counter-terrorist financing.
Okay.
Yes.
And then what sort of work were you doing for the bank? Was it more, because you're a law graduate,
Yes.
right? So are you looking at the legislative side of things? What sort of things are you looking for
at that
in your role?
Okay. At that point in time, my role was quite operational. So I worked in the corporate institutional banking business. I worked in the import and export sector of the business. So we did a lot of transaction monitoring. We did a lot of client due diligence. You get to know what KYC entails in that business. You get to understand, you build risk profiles, you get to understand risk mitigation, and so on and so forth. And I think looking at legislation and looking at what FICA says, we follow those guidelines, we follow those regulatory rules in order for us to remain compliant with the FIC and different regulatory authorities in the space.
Okay. So how has the journey been without admission? And which roles have you occupied? Because I think you've gone into banking,
yes,
maybe insurance, if I'm correct.
No, well, not insurance. I was with a tech company, so it was digital finance.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So just share a bit about how it has been without admission and the roles that you occupied in the process.
So it's been, how can I put it? Interesting.
Okay.
Admission is, I think, as my journey has progressed in my career and having the mentorship that I have, it is an advantage to be admitted, right? One, it opens up a lot of opportunities for you, right? You're not as limited as you would be, especially because a lot of businesses in the industry still look for admission as a requirement, even though the substance of the work that you're doing doesn't really need you to apply anything that you would necessarily have if you were admitted, you know. I would argue that being in industry gives you an edge because you have more on the ground experience of what you're doing. However, I have had quite a few challenges, you know, not being admitted. There are a lot of opportunities that I did feel that I missed out on. However, there is always a way to get what you want, and consulting wisdom and having mentors that are able to show you what your options are if you do want to get admitted is such an advantage, because we always think, I need to resign from my job, I need to find a law firm, I need to do my articles for 2 years, I need to write board exams. There are so many other ways to get into it. I know there are a lot of parastatals and government organizations that will, and even private companies, right, that will take you on secondment for you to do your articles at a firm while they're still paying you your salary.
Oh, nice.
With whatever other organization is in partnership with them. You can also register with LEAD, write your board exams. Once you've gotten your certificate that you've written boards, you know, you've been a member of the Law Society for X amount of time, you can then also pursue your articles and do it for a shorter amount of time than what is traditionally prescribed, and you can still get admitted. You know, so there are a lot of different avenues that you can pursue, but I think my journey has been quite unique in that I have been fortunate enough to be afforded opportunities where, even though admission was technically a requirement, the person on the other side saw so much potential in me that they took me on board and developed my skills, and that's how I've landed where I've been able to today. Yeah.
Okay, so you're currently in compliance
Yes.
and prevention.
Yes.
And then what does that entail? What does your day-to-day activities look like? Or what does your role entail?
All right. Maybe to start, so when I started my career, I was in the banking space, right? So I was at a bank for about 3.5 years. And then I joined a tech company for about a year or so. And if you remember, during COVID, there was just a downturn and, you know, a little bit of chaos in the tech space, and there were a whole lot of layoffs, and I was affected. So I was laid off, and I found myself unemployed for a year. And I think in that year, I found space to think, because when you're going to work every day and, you know, you sort of going about your day-to-day duties, you think, okay, this is where I need to be, and you kind of get comfortable and you don't realize that actually you kind of selling yourself short on what your actual potential is. So I think even though I had a lot of challenges that year, it afforded me time to think about what I actually want. So during that year, obviously you're applying, you know, I was pursuing my own project on the side as well, got to know a bit of myself, got to discover parts of myself that I thought, you know, no longer existed. And that led me to the role that I carried. Well, after that year of unemployment, I worked for another bank for 8 months, but I knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be, and I was so convinced. And I didn't give up on my search, and eventually so what had happened was I had applied for the role at the regulator before I even got the call back for the role that I was in prior. So by the time the regulator had called me, it had been about a year later, and I had actually forgotten about my application. And they called me and they said, look, are you still interested? We're really interested in your CV. We're looking for so-and-so, a person with the skill set. We'd like to meet you. And I was like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I went to the interview, got the job. I started there. So basically, what the regulator does is oversee the sort of the compliance adherence of businesses in the financial sector, so banks, DNFBPs, so those are designated non-financial businesses and professions. So your estate agents, your lawyers, your gambling and casino sort of organizations, and so on and so forth. So what we do is we oversee the regulatory compliance of those entities. We don't necessarily have as much influence over the banks because, legislation has developed and the Prudential Authority under the SARB oversees them. But what we do on a day-to-day basis is basically conscientize industry on their their compliance obligations, ensure that they are registered as per the Act. We do a lot of roadshows where we give guidance to organizations on how to successfully draft their risk management and compliance programs. We have a arm of our organization that deals with enforcement and so on and so forth. So where companies or other industries are not adhering, we go out and we conduct inspections. That's another department. But what I do on a day-to-day is ensure that DNFBPs, the banks that do reporting to our organization are following the rules, essentially. And what the role of my organization is to basically ensure the integrity of the country's financial system. As you all know, we are on the grey list. The Financial Action Task Force has grey listed us as an economy, and we are working with them rigorously, on the front lines, to ensure that we get off that grey list as soon as possible. So they gave us a whole lot of recommendations where we are actively engaging with industry to ensure that they implement those on a industry level, on an entity level, so that we can go back to FATF and say, from the recommendations that you gave us, this is what we've done, this is the results that we've gotten, what is your verdict? And then they adjudicate us further, and then they decide, are we still on the grey list, are we off, what further action is needed, and so on and so forth. So that's what's currently happening, a lot of it is on our site. I don't know if I should say where I work, but yeah, I'm at the Financial Intelligence Center. Yeah, a lot of the so a lot of the financial intelligence centers activities on our site. Everything about what we're doing with FATF is on open source, so you're more than welcome to look that up. It's public information.
Interesting work. So on traditional routes, like being an admitted attorney at a firm, you know how you're going to progress in your career. You're going to become a junior attorney, senior attorney, partner, director, whatever. In corporate spaces, because you're in regulatory, I'm not sure where it falls under. In corporate spaces, you're going to be like a legal counsel, and then head of legal, and then probably something else later on. There's your career progression. So what career progression do you say is available within the space that you are in?
Oh, I like that question. I think, so as I said earlier, when we're in law school, we're sort of put on this one-track mindset that this is how to be successful as a person with a law degree from this university. I think we lack so much imagination as professionals, but more especially as legal professionals. And I'm including myself in there as well. And I think in my journey, I've learned that you need to be intentional about what you want, and you don't need to subscribe to a certain path that has already been mapped out by whoever says for you to be able to define your success. In my industry, or rather the career path that I'm looking at, I have changed, or rather I have adapted my desires as and when I go, because you'll get into a space and then you'll realize, I like this part of it, but this part is not necessarily what I want to continue with. And you sort of put yourself in spaces, you expose yourself to environments, you interact with people that will bring you closer to the kind of career that you want to build for yourself. So, for example, I'm in the compliance space, right? I work at the regulator. A person could say that my trajectory is climbing the ladder, maybe becoming director of the financial intelligence institution, maybe one day becoming the CEO. I think it's all up to you and what you want, your strengths and your weaknesses, your interests, and how do I say, the blueprint that you define as your success. So in my field, there is so much that you can do. I have a friend, right, that has gone the route that I've gone. He isn't admitted. He has done a lot of work in different industries. So he's been in insurance, he's been in tech, he's been in the banking industry, and right now he's the head of legal at one of the big firm at one of the big banking firms. So I think industry is really opening up to the non-traditional CV. Do you know what I mean? In terms of placing people in their head of legal positions. So it's not limited. You can go into advisory. You could go into policy making. You could stay in
So good.
Yeah, you could
So
stay in
good, Obi.
parastatals and be part of, monitoring and analysis or compliance and prevention or whatever analytics, you can go to the SARB, you could go to the PIC. These are just some of the, parastatals that are out there where you can explore opportunities.
Yeah.
And then obviously you'll have your private companies. You can go into banking, you can go into insurance, you can go into tech. You can go into consulting. There is so much that you can
so
do with the
much.
skill set that you have. And I think it's up to you to engage your imagination and not box yourself into what the set path is to, traditional success. So I think that's what I subscribe to. I've pivoted so many times and I'm still in a space where I'm like, okay, I'm great here. I'm getting closer to where I want. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to follow what is traditionally required for me to follow. I might just pivot into policy.
Yeah, because my next question was, do you think that admission is necessary to have a successful legal career?
So, I'm in two minds about it, right? I think I've seen evidence of professionals, young, talented, that have gone the traditional route without admission, that are in really great positions. They are the head of legal, they are the head of advisory, they are sitting on exco of different companies, right? I think so. I have a mentor, and he always says to me, you know what? There is no disadvantages in having your admission, because if you have it, it gives you all the more options for you to explore, right? And what he also said to me, because there was a time where I thought I really needed admission for me to get into the spaces I really needed to. And he's like to me, one, don't limit yourself. But at the same time, two, think of your degree as like a house. Admission is like putting the roof tiles on top of that house. So you have a complete house. Not that you're not complete without admission, but admission really does help you in terms of breaking into certain markets and in certain industries and certain places. So I think admission is not a prerequisite for success, but I think it'll make your journey so much easier. And I think for me, looking back, look, I have no regrets about the path that I chose at all, but I think admission would have made my breaking into certain spaces so much more easier, because what admission does is that it buys you credibility. It buys you sort of currency in the legal spaces, because you know how the legal fraternity is. Like they gatekeep their space.
Yeah, true.
Like, they want to ask you, when did you get admitted? Like they want to know all of that stuff. So yes and no. It is advantageous to have your admission. I would advise young graduates to get admitted if that's something that they, because you always have it in your back pocket, whether you use it or not, whether you go into traditional practice or not. You always have it in your back pocket. But I also think you can have a full, successful career and build a really great name for yourself without your traditional admission. So, yeah, that's my take.
Okay, cool. So something lighter before we close off. I want to find out, which book have you read that blew your mind or changed your life?
Oh, Outliers.
Outliers.
By Malcolm Gladwell. He's a friend of mine, very good friend of mine. She's a traditional lawyer. She's a competition lawyer, very intelligent, fiercely intelligent, super smart, very opinionated. She gave me this book, Outliers, by Malcolm Gladwell.
I thought you were saying that Michael is your friend. I was just like, Obi, who are you?
I mean, I can make it happen, Malcolm, if he ends up
Is
watching
it Malcolm, not Michael?
It's Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
yes.
Apologies for that.
It's an amazing book.
Yeah.
I think everybody should read that book. it fundamentally blew my paradigm thinking, or it engaged a different paradigm shift in how I navigate life and how I go about setting into practice systems to achieve my goals.
Okay.
Just the way he goes into how to develop your talent, and how to be better at the things that you already love and the things that you're already good at, and the sort of principles that he helps bring to the surface of your consciousness that he applies, or that people should apply, and that the 1% of the 1% apply in becoming the greats that they are in their respective fields, whether you're an Olympian, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a dancer, whether you're an actor and actress. I love that book. I still refer to it to this day. She borrowed it to me. She took it back. I went back and bought the thing.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
That's an amazing book, and I'd recommend it to people.
Great. Finally, my last questions, I ask all the guests this question, is what does wholeness, being whole, what does that currently look like for you?
Oh, I have been on a journey in my life. Story for another day. However, in this season, for me, wholeness looks like rest.
Okay.
I'm a firstborn girl of 3. I come from an academic household.
Sure.
My dad went to med school. My mom has a bunch of degrees. She has a nursing degree. She has a law degree. My brother's an engineer. My sister's studying medicine.
That's intense.
So you can tell like the vision my parents had in mind when they said, okay, we want children, and this is what success looks like for us. For me, wholeness is one, affirming my identity. I don't think I would have gotten this far without being plugged into source. And source can look different to a lot of people, but I am a child of God. I know what my identity in Christ looks like. So I think of reaffirming my identity and being okay to just leaning into rest in the season of my life. I am such a busybody. I have to be doing something all of the time. I have to be involved in a project. I have to be studying something. I have to be out and about out there. But I think in this season, being whole is fully surrendering to just resting, listening to my body, listening to just what I want, not doing things with people I love just because they like doing it. Also realizing that actually I don't like doing this and I love you, but you go and do you and I'll do me. If you would like to join me, do it. If you don't, that's great. I'll see you on the other side. So wholeness for me is just fully authentically being myself, pouring into my own cup, leaning into rest, and just reaffirming what my identity is and living in my purpose. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Obi.
Thank you so much.
We've learned so much from you. I don't know what AML stands for, anti-money laundering.
Yes.
We've learned about getting into the compliance sector and career progression. I think that was a great highlight for me, that we must keep an open mind to where we could potentially end up. And there was just a lot of nuggets in between about success. You spoke a lot about how we must define our own success, be willing to pivot, that admission does assist you, but God can actually have a different path for you that is successful. I think the most important thing is that we define our own success.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Success is not the same for everyone. It's defined differently for everyone. And I like the element of what wholeness actually looks like for you, which is rest, surrendering to rest. I think a lot of us don't actually consider that wholeness can be that. There's a lot of peace that comes with listening to your body and listening to your mind and having peace and resting. So guys, with that, it brings us to an end. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share. And we cannot wait to be on this channel the next time.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.